Hello and welcome to another episode of the Socially Numb podcast. I am your host, Richie Leahey. Today, we're going to be breaking down the Raspberry Pi 3. I previously owned the Raspberry Pi 1, I believe, or 2. I think it was the first one. And I played around with it a good bit, and I didn't get too far into the application world with it, because I mainly used it for projects, and I like the idea of having a portable operating system. I used to carry around an actual USB drive that had some type of Linux operating system on it, either Debian or Ubuntu, and that would be my portable operating system, so that if I went to someone's house and I need to do some work, I could just plug in the USB drive and port or boot right into the operating system that I wanted to use. And as the USB drives got cheaper, I was able to always keep one on hand. I just kept a clone of it. I didn't need too much. They're pretty light operating systems, so you can get away with carrying even a 16 gigabyte flash drive. I think I always went with 64 though. And the cool thing behind that is you carry your work with you. So as long as you have, and like with Ubuntu, I can install Dropbox. So I could have a full-fledged operating system here, back up my files to Dropbox, so that as I worked on someone's computer, it would be stored remotely. I could access it from my phone, do additional work, and whatever I needed to do. I mainly work in plain text files and do a lot of bare bones programming and things on the base level, right in the terminal itself. So I do a lot of document editing and things right there. So I don't really need a GUI interface, which is a graphical user interface on my machines. But I like the idea of having a Raspberry Pi, which was itself a portable computer, because most people have a television or some monitor that you can use. And the cool thing with the Raspberry Pi, I believe the one I used to have had an HDMI output. I know the one I currently have, the Raspberry Pi 3, does. So if you carried this to someone's house, you would have your own computer, so you could work at kind of like a portable computer that's not as big as a laptop. You can throw it in a small bag. You do need to have some type of monitor, but you can throw it up. It plays videos. I haven't really tested it too much on the other video side of things. What I mean by that is having a high definition video playing, or even one that's 4K resolution on an external monitor. Now, with mine itself, and I've put some videos together looking at these, and I'm going to start putting them up on my YouTube channel. I mentioned it before that I was going to have them up. I've still been working on setting up the website a good bit, so I have not gotten to that. But my goal is to have little tidbit videos, and maybe not so much. I don't want to do tutorials. I mentioned this before, but I want to show some tech things that I think people would be interested in, not so much along the lines of like hacking, but some base user level things, so that if you're a younger kid growing up, some basic things on how a computer works. And I think the Raspberry Pi is a great first look and first tool at that. So I'm going to be breaking down the Raspberry Pi, because at its best, it's a core computer. So you have everything that you need on one little chip that you can carry. Now you can get little carrying cases for it that plug into any system, so I can carry it to someone's house, have my wireless keyboard, my wireless mouse plugged into the Raspberry Pi, and all I need is some type of output device that has an HDMI output. And it's pretty cool because I can carry it with me. And this go around, after I had the previous Raspberry Pi, I also got the touchscreen that came with the Raspberry Pi. So now I have my own little monitor that I can carry with me and switch input output onto another device or anything similar that I need to look at. So I'll be breaking all these down. I know I have a video showing my gear and what I have, but I'm going to go through, look at. So if you hear some background noise, it's me actually manipulating and holding the Raspberry Pi so that I can look at Hopefully it's not too annoying, but I want to be able to go through and make sure that I don't miss any of the features that the Raspberry Pi has. And so I have a case with it, and the case is good for holding in the actual monitor. Now on mine, I'm kind of going back and forth because I would probably end up getting two of these. One that's more of an HDMI output Raspberry Pi that I carry with me. I haven't messed around too much with getting my files backed up on Dropbox or some other cloud computing software though. That's one of my main requirements. I guess I could do the USB copy files back and forth if I needed to, if I was going to carry two Raspberry Pis around, or most likely carry one around and have the other one as a backup, one that has the monitor, and then the other one I would need an actual TV or output monitor to plug into, and then use that as the main device. But right now, I have the Raspberry Pi 3. Looking at it here, it's pretty small. I don't know the actual dimensions. I can take a guess, maybe 3 inches by 2 inches, or at the most 4 inches wide or long by 2.5 inches. It's very small. Actually, it might be the size of a credit card. I don't have my wallet here, but I do have my iPhone. I have an iPhone 6, the small one, not the big one, and it is pretty small compared to the iPhone. I'm holding it on the back here just to see where it lines up, and it lines up, the device lengthwise goes about to the bottom of the Apple. I can still see the full Apple on the back, so it's not quite that long, but it's fairly good size for a mini computer and very easy to carry it around. Now with this, if you want visuals, as I go through and try to describe this a little bit, I'm mainly talking about ports, but if you want to see it, please check out the YouTube channel I have set up for Socially Numb. Look for it, give me a follow, a subscription, subscribe, so that you can see the devices I'm talking about as I go into more and more of the technical side of things on the Socially Numb podcast and show. So on the bottom, you have the micro SD port. And right now on mine, I have, 128 gigabyte card. Actually, yeah, I did have this before. So I had that card from a tablet, a transformer tablet, Asus transformer, and the Raspberry Pi is my upgrade of that transformer tablet. Because with Android, it got slow. They don't have any other updates. I rooted it, came back, have the extra files. It's pretty quick. It runs pretty smoothly, but at its core, it's not fast enough with the Android operating system to do what I want. Even browsing the internet, but doing base programming things you can't really do on the tablet. And that's one thing where the tablets fail. It's great for anyone that just wants to have a device that they can sit on the couch and browse the internet for, one tab at a time, but the processing power on tablets, they're not high enough to be going through multiple tabs. Maybe the way Safari works on the iPad, you could do that because each tab is kind of hidden and then you have to go into it, but at its core, no tablet is really set up for that. So now on the bottom, there's also a chip, and I have mine covered up with like a mini heatsink. I don't know if there needs to be one there, but I wanted to put heat sinks on this to make sure that it didn't get hot. The first version I had of this got pretty hot whenever you use it for a while, and this one hasn't been overheating, and I've been running a lot of operating system tests on it. So I installed Raspbian, which is a port of Debian that they set up for their own operating system. And that's pretty cool so far as an operating system because I have basically the full control. The only downside is the architecture is for the Raspberry Pi. It's a little different. They don't use the core 64-bit or 32-bit operating system, so you can't install all of the packages. You can only install a few. And with that, you basically, besides like some of the cloud ones, like the Dropbox, I've pretty much been able to install all the operating system things I normally do on a Linux install. And I'll be going through some of my programs that I use, maybe set up a parallel emulator and do some screen captures, or even do screen capture itself on the Raspberry Pi. I just don't know if that will push it too far and be laggy. I'm not sure. So then on the other side, you have the ports, you have your standard pins, you have a pin display, which is used for the touchscreen. And the touchscreen is pretty cool. I don't know the resolution. I thought it was like 720 by 480, maybe. It might be higher than that though. I don't think it's high def for the touchscreen. And I think the touchscreen, actually I don't know the details on it, so I don't even want to go into it and have some listener get pissed off because I'm wrong. But the touchscreen, you just put right into the pin display port and it works. Now my case has a holder for that. The display goes right in, I have it screwed in. It works great. My only downside, the only negative that I have is that it covers up the HDMI output port. There's like a screw here, and there's no way for me to plug in the HDMI. So like I couldn't toggle two displays. I don't know if the Raspberry Pi handles it, but because my case doesn't let me explore, I can't really see. So right now, that's why I would probably get two Raspberry Pis, because if I have my device in this case, I have to take it out physically to switch to use an external monitor. So when I set this one up, it's most likely going to stay in the touchscreen case, which isn't too bad. Altogether, I'm able to run the power needed for this and the display on one external backup charger for a cell phone. So it works pretty cool because everything works perfectly. I don't need to have an outlet port for it. It works directly from the battery. And I do have an official cable for the Raspberry Pi, but I don't even use it because I just use the external battery carrying it around. And maybe that's something for like I have a Raspberry Pi bag that I'm going to make because it's going to have the touchscreen, this Raspberry Pi in it, the mouse I use for it, and maybe the keyboard. The keyboard has a touchpad, but the touchpad doesn't work like the Mac touchpad. It's actually kind of annoying because it's like off to the side. It's like right where the arrow keys are, but I'm just not used to it. I haven't used it enough. But typing's been okay, and I haven't tried too much of the programming languages things on it because I only have installed what I need and what I would use, and we'll talk about that another time because I don't have a video set up. I haven't got into the operating system too much. I'm still setting it up. The HDMI output works great. Once I installed, I think when I installed the latest version of Raspbian on the micro SD card, I don't think I had to install anything else. So like once that was installed, that was it. I didn't have to go through and install drivers. I installed some programs myself that I like to use, and I went through and tested a bunch of different browsers because I like to browse the internet and I like to see things that are coming up pretty quick. But I think most of the time the browser handles it pretty fast. And I used some of the other ones. I tested my website, so Socially Numb does work in pretty much every browser. I'm pretty sure they all use like the same WebKit or something anyway. And since that's what I have the browser set up for, I'm pretty sure it's going to work. Now, if you're using some outdated browser, I did look at, what's the one, Lynx. It's a command line only browser. And there were some issues with that, but I'm going to try to fix those up because I want our website to be as accessible as possible. But I need to get some of the other tags and things for social media set up first before I dig into that. The next port going around the side, I missed the power port, but the power port's a USB power port, just like a cell phone would have. So I carry an external, I actually have two different ones. One's a Rav Power, and the other one I use is something else. It might be in the picture. But I have that, and I use that to supply power to my device. And the case I got has a USB splitter so that you can go ahead and plug one outlet cable into both the screen and the Raspberry Pi because they both are powered by USB. But both power packs I have two outputs, so I'm able to use just both cables that came with them, plug one to the screen and one into the device, and it will charge it for, actually it ran it for pretty much over a day or two. I didn't run like an exact power test, but I was installing and uninstalling packages while I had it on that external power, and I was testing to see, but it ran a good bit because I think each power pack, I don't know what size I have, but if you message me, let me know. I can look it up for you. But each one charges my phone like 5 or 6 times. And so I'm pretty sure that it powers the Raspberry Pi for an equivalent amount of time. Now, there is a camera port on my version, and I do have both cameras. They have a night vision camera or one that's set up for dark night things, and then they have a regular camera. I want to say they're 8 megapixels. I don't know how good the quality is, but I pretty much got them just for playing around with, and that's about as far as I've gotten. And that's something that I'd probably set up. I don't think I actually tested it though in my case. I wanted to see if there was because my case for the touchscreen has a Lego component. So you can get a Lego a Lego holder for the camera itself. So the camera sits in this Lego attachment, and then I can Lego it onto my board. Or if I had other Legos around the house, I could set up a board of Legos and then I could move my camera around. So it's a pretty cool concept. Like if I had a Lego board pinned virtually on my wall, I could go ahead and attach my camera to it. And then that way I could move it around and do like maybe webcam things. I haven't tested too much. I'm pretty sure Hangouts wouldn't work on this because of the way how heavy it is. But maybe Skype, which I don't know. I haven't installed Skype, I don't believe, or went to test it, or any other video program. But that's something that I would like to try just to see if it can handle it. Now, maybe I would have to use command line or something. But the Raspberry Pi should be able to handle some type of processing power for video. And I'm hoping that once I get that running, then I can test the rest of some other features and things out for the Raspberry Pi. Maybe make some videos on it and talk about it on the podcast a bit. But from a tech aspect, if you're someone who's going to try to get into tech, this is what I would start with. I mean, you could go ahead, go to Goodwill and try to get another computer, break down the parts, try to replace them, make sure that it works. But this at its whole will get you good with the programming aspect of computer science, and that's what you need. You need to know how to boot up your operating system, install, uninstall packages by command line. Yeah, it runs Linux. I think there is an Internet of Things Windows port, so if you wanted to get into the command prompt, you can go ahead and use the Windows operating system, but they're very similar. So once you learn one, and if you learn Linux, it works pretty much one-to-one with Mac. There are some extra things that you can install on Mac, like Homebrew, to get the extra packages that you need, but it's all pretty much straightforward. I program a lot in Ruby and Python, and those are both natively the same on any operating system. They're just harder to install on Windows, but once you have them installed, the programming is the same. So it has the HDMI port, has the camera port. There is a 3.5 millimeter audio jack, and that sounds not the best when I listen to it through headphones, because I was testing out Sonic Pi, which is an operating language that lets you play like music beats, and the sound was pretty low quality. But as soon as I switched the output to HDMI, boom, I had good quality, and it sounded great because I think it uses like the HDMI standard audio output. But then again, it would depend on your TV if you have a soundbar set up or anything like that to what kind of quality you're going to get. It's going to come down to your speakers. But the 3.5 millimeter audio, I haven't tested with a bunch of different headphones. I just know on my initial sound test that it didn't have good quality. It wasn't that great when it came to that. So then you have beside it the Ethernet cable port, and I've used that, and that works pretty well. It's good for setting up, but standardly I use Wi-Fi, and the Wi-Fi is built in on this device, so that works out great because I don't have any problem connecting. The one I go to university and I see like the Edgerome, I've had trouble getting that set up, but I need to just read into it a little bit more to see if that is actually a setup thing. But once I get that set up, hopefully this can connect to any university around. I'm in the United States here. That's what my hope is. Now it has 4 USB ports on this device. Now the 4 USB ports, 2 of them I have in use pretty much all the time. One is for a wireless keyboard, and then the other one is for a wireless mouse. With the one USB that has the keyboard, it also has a touchpad, so it works for that. I haven't tested the Bluetooth because Bluetooth to me is kind of laggy. Maybe it's just the keyboards that I've had, but I've never had a good Bluetooth keyboard that I liked and wasn't as responsive. I find USB Wi-Fi to be much more responsive when I'm typing, and as a programmer and you type a lot, it gets annoying. So I don't have that aspect, but other than that, I have 2 other USB ports that are almost always open. One I did plug in, like sometimes, so depending on where I have this set up, if I have it set up on my desk, I'll plug in the actual full USB wired keyboard just for a little bit even more responsiveness, and it's easier to type on, and that works great. So going back and forth, I've had all 4 ports in use before. Pretty much I've had it maxed out, and it didn't even stress my battery pack. And now with the screen, I did notice that if I am using both, that maybe I need to use the full power. Now my external battery port battery pack carries 2.5 amps or volts, and that is the standard that you need to power this device. So please make sure that you have enough voltage going to the device. You don't want it to get powered. I did notice that if you do stress it, because I was testing different devices, some that didn't have enough power or not, that a little yellow lightning bolt shows up on the screen, and that shows you that it's running out of power. So whenever that is on the screen, you'll know like, hey, it's not getting enough power right now. Maybe I need to disconnect some of my devices. But once I split power between the screen and the actual Raspberry Pi, I haven't ran out of trouble or ran out of power. I haven't run into any trouble. Nothing like blew up on me. So it's been great. And once it's inside the case, like I said, the screen is there. Now on the Raspbian itself, the operating system, I run it full. They have a noobs installer, which is like for newbies. If you're into internet slang, you know what a noob is, or even gaming. But the noob installer pretty much walks you through and lets you install your operating system. I didn't use that, so I can't comment on that. I used the full Raspbian installer. I think it's Jesse is what the operating system is that it's on. But I went ahead, installed that, updated the system, installed all of the packages, went ahead to that, and it was great. No problems. I installed some things I didn't need. Very easy to uninstall once you know the correct commands. I used Synaptic to just give me a visual to see what packages were available. I did find that the built-in devices and system tools on the device weren't the best, so I went ahead and cut them out, tried to get them copyright or not, tried to get them set up as much as I could, copied the ones that I wanted into its own config file, is what I meant to say, and then I deleted all the other shortcuts. So like all the system tools that I didn't use, I just deleted them from the menu and even showing up in the menu so that I know I was never going to use them. And so I got pretty much down to bare bones operating system. And my goal is then to get a matching 128 gigabyte micro SD card and just clone my operating system. And then I'll have 2 versions running at a time. One that I'll probably keep in the screen itself here because it is convenient to just throw it up. I can throw it up on a bed. It has a stand. You can even wall mount it if you wanted to. I did run it through the HDMI, so when you put the HDMI port in, plug that right into a monitor or into a computer screen and bring that up. Boom, that works great. No problems. I have the sound come through there. I would like to get another one that's pretty much not as portable. I don't know if I'm going to end up getting, so like my dilemma would then be, do I get another wireless mouse? And with the wireless mouse, then is one go to each system. So then the one with the screen stays in a Raspberry Pi bag. So whenever I'm done playing with it, I just put everything right into the bag. Or do I just like switch back and forth between the USB drives? Because my feeling is when you have one of these set up, I would probably use it and just use it to like surf the web on my TV. Now it's not super fast. Now, of course, so like if you got a Mac Mini or a mini Microsoft Windows Tower, doesn't matter the manufacturer, you're going to have much more responsiveness and better browser behavior using a full-on machine like that. But the Raspberry Pi itself is great just looking at whatever you have left, because with that, then you just go ahead and put up there. You can run small packages at a time, show whatever you need to, and that's it. If I want to browse pictures, I can put pictures up on the big screen and go from there. Now, with that, you don't want any other extreme packages going down or pushing away, because then what happens is you're left with a system that's hard to keep up to date. It's hard to keep updated, and some of the packages might be forgotten. But I know what I'm doing and I know what I like. So from that aspect, I don't really mess with too much. I have the packages that I know that I would use. And so if I set it up once, I'm pretty much never going to have to really update the system, because you can install stable packages. And then I think what I would do, or how I would use it, is I would put it in one of the portable little cases for the Raspberry Pi. My TVs are mounted on a wall, so I would go ahead and tie the Raspberry Pi in its mini case to the TV, and then maybe have some type of switch, because there's no power switch on the Raspberry Pi. So that's where your dilemma comes in, because if you have one that runs a little bit too hot, the power itself, you don't want it on all the time. And it depends on, like, I have heat sinks on mine. I would recommend doing that. There are cases that let you install a fan, but then the fan gets noisy. I think what I would do is try to find some type of power block switch that you could plug into, like I would plug into my Power Surge, and maybe that has an on-off switch on that itself, so that the Raspberry Pi goes ahead, and whenever I would want to use it, I would just go up and manually turn it on. I don't think I would have it plugged in and on all the time. I think that would cause some trouble. And with that, once I have it set up, I think that would be it. It would be something that I would have on my TV, and you could bring up, show pictures, and that's what I'm kind of testing it for. I'm stress testing it to make sure that it does work for that application, for that purpose. Because once you have it up on your television, you're going to be good to go. And the idea behind the Raspberry Pi is very bare bones, and it gets the job done. So if I wanted just like a tiny media box, and you don't have to go ahead and like show, I have a PlayStation 4, I talked about it before. That's going to be for Blu-rays. I can put media on there. If I wanted like some high def video, I could go ahead and put that on the PlayStation 4 on a USB drive. I could actually switch them back and forth between the Raspberry Pi and the PlayStation 4. But I haven't tested it. I haven't put it through its strides on the big screen TV, watching video, even browsing the web. I do know I tested a couple social media sites. I know Twitter works. I know Facebook works. No, like I said, they're not as fast as if you're using a solid state drive from like Windows or a Mac Mini or anything like that, but it does get the job done if you're just casually browsing. So for a family, if you don't want to pay for a full computer and most of your browsing's done through like a smart TV and you have like Netflix installed, I don't think Netflix would run through here just because it doesn't have like the great graphic processor on here or any chip that's built for that type of processing. But just for browsing the web, maybe checking scores. I know some sites are naturally heavy, which sucks whenever you're trying to go ahead and maybe like view like ESPN. ESPN has tons of scripts that load, so the site is pretty tough to read. But maybe a smaller one that doesn't have as many of those, maybe CBS or even like Fox Sports, I haven't tested. But I'm going to put those through its paces and see which ones work on the Raspberry Pi and which ones don't. Because if you have a mini operating system, you want websites that work, and it's up to the developer. I know my site, Socially Numb, is pretty fast. It's very bare bones. You get the sites, you get the new podcast, you get the new videos. Everything's linked in. Now, yeah, some of the videos go to YouTube. I don't know if YouTube would really work on the Raspberry Pi due to that. But if you subscribed and had a smart TV, you could go right to YouTube itself, use the YouTube app, maybe Chromecast it up to your television. I know my one television has Roku on, which I'll talk about. I'll probably break down the comparison between that and a Chromecast once I get some more experience with it. But for itself, for the Raspberry Pi, it's a great system. And it's something that is quick to use. It boots up fast. I do have some other things that I need to figure out because I like to have my screen locked. So once I get that figured out, they have like a log out. I can log out, but I don't like to log out. I'd rather just have a lock button on the screen somewhere that I could lock the screen and then go up and do whatever I need to do and then come log back in. And that way all of my files and things are still up. But I'm still setting that up. I need to set up Edge of Rome, test out some of the IDEs that they have for like Java, see which one I like to do best just for basic small programming things, maybe some games. But I'm looking into that, digging it out. So far I like it. I did get some robotics kits and like some other like toy kits from the Pi Hut to play around with on the Raspberry Pi. So I'll let you know how those go. I haven't dug into them yet, but that's going to be a later podcast. I think their kits recommend using Python, which I'm good at. So that works for me, and that's why I went with theirs. I know one they have a sensor on, they have a little robotics kit, but I'm going to be digging into those. I'll probably spend a podcast talking about each of those. So if you're looking for like a little toy trinket thing to have, if you have kids or a family and you want to get into like programming or looking at computing, I would recommend going this option. It's pretty cheap if you think of it in the whole of things, because computers are usually a couple $100, but you can get a Raspberry Pi, the setup I have, for under $100 probably. I think the computer itself is $35 if you get the Raspberry Pi 3. The screen in the case, I think the case is $5 or $10, so that puts you like at $40. I think the screen might be $50 or $60. That might be what puts you over $100. But if you already have a television and you don't need that, then you're still at $40 or $50, and you don't need the case anyway. So you're still at $35 actually. Get a micro SD card, which you might have laying around based on your phone, and you're good to go. Most people have an HDMI cable. You would need to pick those up. If you have a mouse or keyboard, you can get one that's built in. I did have the Logitech one that has the touchpad that has the right and left click buttons on it, and that one did work well. There's a newer version, so I haven't tested that one out, but that would probably be my next case is what I would do. Get the Raspberry Pi, get that mouse and keyboard, and that way I would know visually which one worked with which device. So if I was going back and forth, have both Raspberry Pis running at the same time. My next mission option and what I'm going to do is try to get up a cloud backup software. If I can get Dropbox to work, I'll let everyone know. My next thing though is to get that up and running because I like to have an option of backing up my files. I did load Google Drive. I didn't try to load like the device in browser, which might be an option, just dragging files up and loading them in the browser. The only downside with that is that it's going to be slow, and I would rather just find a way to push them if there was some like even built-in application. And I do know that some other ones use it, but if I can get some type of uploader to work, it would be great. And then that way all my files can be shared between the two devices. I know I could run a remote server myself and maybe connect to it Wi-Fi, but then again I have that issue of it's always on and I have to be home to access it. I could open up to the outside, but I like to keep my systems locked down. I don't like to have too many things up and running that other people can access or try to get in and break into. So my goal is to just have the devices set up, have those working, everything working on my own, and then have 2 operating systems ready to be backed up if I need to. They do have an SD card copier, so I probably would get a third SD card just to have my operating system backed up too. Maybe, actually I think it uses USB, which is even cheaper, but maybe just have that on hand, back that up periodically so that if the SD card dies, I can go ahead and just get a new one. I don't even think I need one that big. I copied over some family videos I made, high def. I'm going to test those next on the HDMI itself and test and see how they work on the touchscreen that comes with it. But just for a small, cheap browsing computer, it's been working out great. And I'm going to dig into the technical aspect and show how you would set those up and look at different devices on their own. But that's pretty much it for this week. Just focusing on the Raspberry Pi. I did switch feeds to being hosted instead of on the Socially Numb website. The podcast feed is now hosted on leaheymedia.com with the rest of the podcast feeds that I host. And so if you haven't been getting the new episodes, check our site. Hopefully we don't lose anyone who's been listening, because I do appreciate listeners. So hopefully you can go ahead and resubscribe. I wasn't sure, because the episodes weren't coming up on my iTunes, but I wasn't sure if I manually subscribed to the original feed myself as a test before I submit it to iTunes, or if I actually subscribed through iTunes. So check it out. They're both up to date. So they're both updated with Dad's Strength and Socially Numb. I moved them to Leahey Media. Check those out. I'll be doing a push for that. I also started a new show, Southbound Sports, which is why we're no longer talking about sports on this podcast. So if you want to hear thoughts about like the AFC, NFC championship games that are going on, or actually they're going on as I record this, but they went on yesterday. By the time this is released, if you want to hear the recap on those, go to southboundsports.com. Check those out. If you need anything from me, I did set up a new contact form. I've been testing that, so that should be up and working. I know I had an email before, but the problem with using a direct email is I wasn't sure what was accurate, which ones were actually me getting responses, and which ones were a lot of spam. Like I had people tell me like, hey, I heard talk about tech, check out this product, if I can sell you anything, blah, blah, blah. Those were a lot of the comments I were getting. I did message some people back that responded, and I didn't get any response. So I don't know if they're just general comments, but if I get some constructive feedback or anything, I'm going to start giving shout outs on the show. So make sure you look for that. If you have any questions or comments, please let me know. I've been looking to expand the show. This one's a little bit shorter as I'm getting the Raspberry Pi videos up. So check those out. Look for them. Questions or comments. If there's anything you want me to cover on the Raspberry Pi, please let me know, because I'll be happy to do so. And I'm going to start getting into some more of the programming things and the actual computing side of things. So if you're interested in any of that, the actual tech, not just me talking about tech products like a lot of other shows, I'm going to be digging into the bare bones and getting into the dark and dirty of the programming world, how operating systems work, how viruses work, that type of thing. So let me know. Give me a shout out. Message me on Twitter. The Socially Numb Twitter, again, is gone. We won't be mentioning that anymore. It's now the Southbound Sports. I'm using my Twitter because that way if I have guests, people can reach out to me directly, and it's easier for me to manage instead of managing a Twitter for each show. I know the marketing experts recommend it, but it's really not necessary. So follow me. Richie Leahey is the Twitter. Send me a message. If you have any questions, I'll be putting some stuff up on there regarding the show, starting to push the show out more on my own social media to hopefully get some more listeners. So tell your friends, subscribe. Please leave a review. Those help out too. And thank you for listening. You've been listening to Socially Numb with Richie Leahey.